to another episode of the Ol'Timers comic book show. The show where the hosts aren't old, but the comics most certainly are. Joining me this time around, as always, we have the Professor.
Hey, Johnny. How you doing,
man? How you doing?
How you doing?
And of course, we'll be the same without the 13th Crusader. Back from Mr. Jones one more time to go through some books.
Yo.
Buenos dias, senor.
What?
Yeah, whatever.
No hablo inglés.
No, okay. ¿Cómo está?
Sure.
Hasta la fuego.
Well, fire. Yeah, we'll be talking about fire.
Well, hasta la fuego. Does that not have a good day? Have a nice day. Is that not what that means?
No.
What's that mean?
Fuego is fire.
Is it?
Yes.
Hasta la fuego. Oh, okay.
You mean
fire.
hasta luego.
I don't know. Well,
But I don't know Spanish, so.
There you go. All right, okay, so it is Mad March. This is 13's kind of idea brought on from last year. We're carrying forward this year. Who'd you think it? We've been doing this that long. Mad March books. There's a couple of books that I think kind of spring to my mind when I talk about Mad March. And first off, which we're not talking about, thankfully, because it would scare everybody, this bad boy. If you're going to talk about a mad book, you might as well go to the top, right? Yep. Arkham Asylum. This is a strange place on a serious earth. Man, what do you guys think of this book from the recollections? Does it fit as a Mad March book?
That that would have been like my pick, but yeah, it's too. I think it's too obvious of a choice.
Ooh, yeah.
I had to read it twice, honestly.
Yeah. Really?
When I first read it, I read it again, like right afterwards.
It is a scary book. It is seriously scary. Funny enough, there are some elements from that book that make it into the Dark Knight. The pencil trick, for example, makes an appearance in Arkham Asylum. So there you go. What other books that we could have talked about but didn't make it this time, Professor? Do you think of anything else that kind of could have thought about?
Well, when I was thinking about, we think about March Madness, we always kind of go with like the mental illness aspect, but I always go for, in fact, I think your pick more along the lines of kind of psychedelic, almost crazy type, weird ass stuff. And, I would think, maybe anything like Steranko, like Dr. Strange, Nick Fury, something really like makes you think like you took some too many mushrooms or something,
Yeah, the Shield stuff, man. We should do some of that. Yeah, that's what we'll do next time. Super groups. Let me just write that down. Super groups.
So
don't mean ABBA in case anybody shouts out. Super groups that aren't the Avengers. Right.
Yeah, so that. I think there were three different ways that I look at it when I thought of madness was something psychedelic like that, then traditional like mental illness, but then just crazy stuff, like
yeah, that's a fair shout. 13th, anything that kind of do you think snuck through the net that we should have maybe picked up on?
I think some what if stories get overlooked for this, like Hulk going berserk. In some of those stories, Spider-Man as well, like trying to take off the alien costume was a different take. Where he went off the deep end for a bit and trying to remove the costume and it didn't happen. Even the symbiote costume overtaking someone else. So that's always another thing.
There's that lovely issue, isn't there, where the two costumes are pulling at Peter Parker on the cover.
Correct.
That would have been a great call. We should have picked that one.
Carnage is another guy that gets overlooked too.
Yeah. One of the ones that kind of sprung to me today as I was kind of making the notes was the death of Jean DeWolf. The original Sin Eater was, what's that line from the book? It's not the loud ones, it's the quiet ones I'll worry about. And he's right there. The original Sin Eater, man, that was a great story. Great story. Why do we pick that?
And I know we've mentioned this before, and we've even covered it with Craven. The dramatic turn from just your everyday run-of-the-mill villain to someone who really just not only went insane himself, but took Peter Parker for a ride for a bit as well.
Around that time, there's that issue of Web of Spider-Man. I can't remember what number it is. I think it's in the 30s, where Pete ends up in a mental ward for a while.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there was
and
that was a crossover with Amazing and Peter Parker. It was a three-parter.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
and as much as I hate to say it too, Miles Warren is another one that explaining the clones and things like that, like how sick he really was
Yeah.
to create clones of other people, and his infatuation with Gwen Stacy, of course,
yeah.
drove him to that.
Are
So
you Miles Warren in disguise then? With your infatuation with Gwen Stacy.
I cannot admit nor deny, Machine.
And that Mad storyline with Peter was more focused on Betty Brant, because that was shortly after Ned Leeds was killed, and she kind of had a little detached from reality moment when she was she was thinking that Ned was still alive, and Flash Thompson had to come to her rescue, pretty much.
One of the books I should have picked when I think about it, there's a Batman. There is a Batman run, Dark Knight, Dark City. It's a 3-issue run. Got Mike Mignola covers on there, and the Riddler basically has Batman going through all sorts of macabre setups. So, like, he has to save a goat. Then he has to save a newborn by, like, he spill the blood of a newborn. So all of these little things he's doing build up to this massive, like, riddle, stroke, spell, incantation type thing. And that's out there. And there's a Detective Comics one where there's like a meta comic where the comic is in the comic sort of thing, and all sorts of crazy demon stuff goes. There is loads. There are absolute loads out there. So
I'll throw Parallax out there. I almost went with that.
Oh yeah, cool. It's funny because we actually we've gone this. I'm not going to tell no spoilers on this show right now, but I will say we've gone from the absolute sublime all the way through to the ridiculous. Massively. This I don't think we could have interpreted the idea of Mad March in any in 3 separate ways that we are doing. So I find that quite amusing that all 3 of us have kind of gone like our own separate sense of bonkersness on that one. Right, enough of the dilly dally. Let's get on to our books. Now, I don't say this very often, but the 13th Crusader has picked an absolute gem to start us off with. In fact, the whole run is the pièce de résistance of Marvel Comics of this era. It's Daredevil 227, and we're going to talk about the second issue 228 as well. This is I'll give you the stats. Daredevil 227 was Feb 86, 228 was March 86, 227 on a certain eBay site can get you £37, up to £18 depending on your grade. Sorry, £18 for 228 on that one. Go Collect has it down as around $44 for grade 9.2, but 120 for 9.6. Anywhere between 22 to 60 for 228. There you go. Both written by Frank Miller. Both have art by David Muschielli. Colors on 227 is Christy Sheed. Letters on both is Joe Rosen. Muschielli actually goes ahead and provides the colors on the second issue. There we go. 13th. Well done, sir. You've picked an absolute, as I said, a blinder on this one, an absolute worldie. Why don't you take it away and see what happens?
Yeah, so Daredevil 227 kicks off the Born Again story arc for Daredevil, which is arguably probably one of the best storylines in Daredevil, hands down, if not the best, and for a lot of reasons. So basically, in very quick one-line sentence of what this is about, this is Daredevil losing everything, pretty much. And in not just himself, but the world of Daredevil is unlike anything you probably would have ever known. For those of you who may be fair weather readers of Daredevil, but this is a must have. I would think for anyone, to be honest. The team that brought you the Batman Year One is pretty much here. So with Frank Miller and Dave Mazzucchelli. So the opening scene in itself is, to me, just seemed like a movie
Great.
with the way that it was drawn. You see Karen Page, who unfortunately went down a very dark path. She's pretty much become a porn star actor and a heroin addict. And this is the foundation of the story. She sells out Daredevil's secret identity of Matt Murdock, and that information trickles its way into the hands of the Kingpin. Now, everyone knows that the Kingpin is a thorn in the side for Daredevil and vice versa. So can you imagine what the Kingpin can do with this kind of information? And what stuns me with Frank Miller in this is how he just weaved this tale of how complex the Kingpin's psyche is. Pretty much, this is a guy that in this storyline, this to me is the definitive Kingpin. Just how much of a mastermind, how malicious he is, and how greedy he is, and he'll do anything that it takes to maintain his underground empire, worldwide enterprises, if you will. But Matt Murdock, when he learns his identity, has no idea that the Kingpin has this information. So slowly but surely, Matt Murdock's life is turned upside down, literally in a day. He gets a notice from the IRS. He's getting audited. His bank wants to foreclose on his apartment. There's a variety of things here that the Kingpin kind of sets up to destroy Matt Murdock's life. He even has a 20-year cop testify that Matt Murdock was committing perjury. So all of these things are happening in the life of Matt Murdock, and ultimately he even has his house blown up. So Kingpin is hitting him from so many angles, and Matt Murdock is completely clueless as to who is doing this. But throughout issue 227, you're going to see this whole setup, a day in the life of Matt Murdock, all of the bad luck happening. His girlfriend becomes his ex-girlfriend and goes into the arms of Foggy, his best friend. Everything that could possibly go wrong for Daredevil happens in this one issue in 227. That's how the story arc kicks off. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about issue 228 as well is because you get a little bit more detail of the aftermath of, like, wow, you know, issue 27 ends with Murdock's apartment being blown up. But now in 227, like the opening pages, this is not how you envision your Marvel superheroes to be. Homeless, renting a room, and most importantly, paranoid. And Murdock suspects that it's Kingpin at this point, but he suspects everyone. He even suspects Foggy selling him out. So, but then on the flip side, you just see a Kingpin, like you really get to crack his head open and see what's inside of the mind of the Kingpin and how malicious he really is. So this is really Daredevil, like, completely losing it. He's already envisioning killing the Kingpin. And it's a Matt Murdock unlike you've ever seen. And he even calls Foggy and says, hey, I'm onto you, thinking that somebody sold him out. This is his best friend. So the Kingpin has Matt Murdock trailed. He's aware that Matt Murdock is losing it. He's lost everything around him physically. Now he knows he's losing it mentally. And this is a Matt Murdock unhinged. Karen Page starts to feel guilt as well. Like, oh my God, what did I do? For a fix of heroin is what this is what she did to Matt Murdock. She sold him out. But you see Karen Page slowly, she's like, I got to get out of here. I got to warn Matt Murdock that what I did. But in the meantime, Matt Murdock just like, you know what? It's got to be the Kingpin. So let me go and try to attack him. And that did not work out so well. Kingpin literally thrashes Matt Murdock and throws him out in a cab, drowned in whiskey, trying to drown him. Matt survives and literally lives out in the streets for a little bit. But to find out like the rest of how Born Again goes, you got to read the rest of the arc. And to me, it's Daredevil 227 all the way through 233.
Perfect. Cool. Good shout. I've got to say, it's been a while since I looked at this. Looking at it this morning before we were doing the pod, I was blown away. I was like, wow. it seems like every iteration of Daredevil, whether it be comic books, whether it be rebooted comic books, whether it be the TV show, whether it be the movie, yes, I know I'm bringing up the movie, always boils down to Matt versus the Kingpin. It's kind of thing. Professor, we've been talking up the Zdarsky run of Daredevil, and I went as far as to say it's probably this generation's version of Frank Miller. What's it like going back to see the original and see, wow?
Oh, there's nothing like it. I mean, just going back and touching the Frank Miller books again with Mazzucchelli on the art was, for me, it was like coming home a little bit. You know, just reading it. No one did it better than Frank Miller, and these books really take you on a ride with Matt. Matt Murdock has always been one that I never really looked at as a really great superhero like a Peter Parker with the with great power comes great responsibility. Matt Murdock to me has always been a bit questionable when it comes to his personal choices in life, which I actually kind of enjoyed because it actually made you feel like he was vulnerable in a way and trying to be the best person that he could given the other things that, I mean, he really, really has a penchant for women, loose women. and he just doesn't know how to say no. So it's for me, everybody has those vices and that's his vice. And that pays him back in the first pages of this issue here with 227. That's, with Karen Page really kind of coming out of the woodwork and selling him out. But that really kind of shows you how he treats the women that he's with. I mean, how Karen Page even became Karen Page at that moment. So to me, I thought it was great. What a great vision Frank Miller had for that book.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is Frank Miller at the height of his powers. I know people will say, well, he's done better stuff. And I could argue that he probably... Batman Year One, for me, is the book.
But that was around the same time, so...
Yeah, so this is like his... I've always enjoyed his writing more than his art. I think his art can be a little bit caricaturesque. I think Dark Knight Returns itself can be a little satirical, looking at it with modern day eyes, if not recognizing it for the satire that it was back then. This is a classic. The Born Again storyline is a classic story. No hands up, no hands down. However you cut it, it is pure classic Marvel. If you want to know what got people excited about Marvel comics back in the day, it was this. It was stuff like this. Pushing the envelope, the cinematography elements of the opening panels of 227, just absolutely gorgeous. There where they are. Just the whole, it's just screams cinema. The parallel between Matt waking up in his own bed versus waking up in a flop house from 228 is perfectly weighted for sure.
That page right there is history. That one page right there. The day Daredevil got sold out by someone who's very, very close to him, all for a fix of heroin.
I think we've kind of, the title for the whole idea, this storyline is Born Again. What I think we fail to realize as we see Matt go through the mill is that all the characters are born again in this series. There's not a single character that's not affected. Kingpin becomes that monster mobster that kind of is going to rule New York for years to come in this run. The whole Karen Page thing, she bounces back, she comes back. Matt, born again to find his feet and be who he is down the line. All the characters in this book go through that cycle at some point or another. I think that's just a really clever way of ensuring that as a reader, every page has something for you. It's not just a simple case of, I'm just going to read the Daredevil bits, flip through. I don't need to see the Foggy bit. I don't need to see the Uric bit. You do. Absolutely. Every character goes through the ringer. Well, maybe not as much as Matt does, but every character goes through a transition in this run.
And is this the storyline where they introduced religion, right? Or has that been a constant?
There's
Because I know
symbols of that later on in the run where you see Matt actually being picked up by his mom, who he was unaware that she was his mother. But
that's in this storyline, right?
that's in this arc
Yeah.
as well, and there's hints of that in here as well.
So I mean, all those elements that we now take for granted as part of Daredevil, whether we get our Daredevil fix from the comics, from the Netflix show, which is on Disney Plus, or whether we get it from movies, that whole religion motif is played brilliantly. I thought this was a really, really good shout. And I will say that I do prefer Mazzucchelli's DC work. I like the simpler lines on year one than this. This just is a little bit too Marvel for me, for someone who's quite a eclectic artist, that has to be said. Cool.
I think Mazzucchelli is one of the definitive Daredevil artists for the 80s.
I agree. I just prefer his Batman stuff.
Yeah,
Although
this hit every 80s main point. You know, the drugs, the fragileness of the city in New York was definitely, you could be at the top and you could be at the bottom. There didn't seem to be a middle. So it definitely hit a lot of points.
I will say that this panel, we see this panel again in year one when the police chief's looking over his glasses at Gordon, who's had an affair with Sarah Essen. It's the same sort of panel that's on there. So, you know, even the great ones homage themselves, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
Is it a homage when you copy yourself? I don't know. Follow my Twitter for a conversation with Liam Sharp to find out if that's the case. True that. Right, time for a break while we key up the next book. So I recently interviewed Mark Guggenheim, the executive producer, TV writer, comic book writer for the Arrowverse and all sorts of other things. Showed him a couple of our adverts, and he said they are fantastic pieces of work. So without further ado, it's probably, other than our advert, which we can't show because we're on the show, probably the best one. Here we go. There you have it, Crisis in the Toyverse, handily recommended by Mark Guggenheim. The other one he liked was the TDC one, but man, that goes on forever.
Yeah.
That's a long one. All right, okay, next up is this graffitied version of The Professor's Choice.
Is that signed by Peter David?
Yes, it is.
Wow.
So this is The Incredible Hulk number 339 from 1988. Not an expensive book in the UK. You can get this between £4 and £5. Obviously not signed by Peter David. Go Collect has it for $30. This is slap bang in the middle of the Peter David as writer, Todd McFarlane as art, Jim Sanders III, is on inks, Rick Parker is on letters, and colours are by Peter Scotese. I think I've said it right. Bud, this is your choice.
It is.
Bud, smash.
Well, I wanted to do, when we were talking March Madness, I wanted to do the whole duality thing with the Hulk and Bruce Banner, and because I always think, I always look at, well, we always been told that Hulk is like the Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde of the Marvel Universe, and here I think when you think Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, this really kind of puts the new spin on it, because this is Peter David's revelation about Bruce having been a victim of child abuse, and kind of kind of bringing up to the fact that the Hulk really is that aspect of his angry personality, or how he dealt with or didn't deal with the fact that he was abused as a child. And this book to me was really, really powerful, and really just kind of a signature of Peter David's run, really, on how he kind of analyzed Bruce, and even wrote him out for a while when Hulk went to Las Vegas to become Mr. Fix-It, which was actually kind of, just them acting out that, that side of the Hulk. And this side, I like this side of the Gray Hulk, where he's more verbose. He's kind of like, almost like the Thing in a way, like just angry and just, just very literate on how angry he is. So you're not used to that with the Green Hulk, where he's just savage and, kind of, he's just a force of nature. Here, he's not really a force of nature. He's less powerful, I want to say, as the Gray Hulk than as the Green Hulk. And here, he has a pretty good supporting cast around him. He's running around with Rick Jones, running around with Clay Quartermain, who is an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. And then you have some subplots going on with Betty, who has kind of shacked up with a supposed ex-husband, but is also going through her own little bit of abuse there. So to me, this book really shines a light on a bunch of stuff that I think that, just trying to make the Hulk darker, I think this is the mid 80s too, right? This is the same time Daredevil's going through his stuff. We're all kind of looking at some more adult type storylines. And has anybody drawn the leader like Todd McFarlane?
Nobody draws anything like Todd McFarlane. That's why he's Todd McFarlane.
And this is before he made his debut on Amazing Spider-Man 2. So this is kind of like the, hey, get to know you, Todd McFarlane, get to like you on Hulk right before you go over and make a name for yourself on Spidey. But yeah, this book really, it is one of those classics. What did you say was the price on that if you wanted to get it online? Because I think it's kind of cheap, right?
Yeah, you can get a whole bunch of the run for like £15 on eBay. It's 4 to 5 over here. Go Collect have it at $30. So I mean, even $30 isn't a high price. I mean, the book's from 1988, so you're talking, what's that? 23 plus 12? No, yeah, 23 plus 12. What's that? 45 years? 45 years old.
Yeah,
man, I feel old. Is that right? It can't be right. 35 years old.
35.
Yeah. I still feel old.
It's 35 is still 10 years past our date from talking about books. So I mean, this is just a great book, a great period. The late 80s are a lot of these great runs going on in these comics. So if you, and I don't know how many people were reading the Hulk at this point, because they were doing a lot of weird stuff with the Hulk. I
think everyone had to step up the game, didn't he? Because I mean, by far, the X books and Spider-Man were probably killing it back then.
Oh yeah.
Maybe not Spider-Man, but the X books were all over the place. They were like they're on a growth spurt. So top creators like pre-top creator McFarlane, but Peter David been on the Hulk for absolute years. And of course Frank Miller. They had to step up the game just to compete, to get some sort of shelf space. And you kind of think that Frank Miller outdid himself with Daredevil, and David outdid himself with the Hulk. Although there is, I suppose, a concern that he stayed on the book a little bit too long. But hey, he's not Chris Claremont, right?
No, absolutely not. And this wasn't the time where David had stayed too long. He was on this book for years after this. But seeing Peter David and Todd McFarlane, that's a classic team right there.
Indeed. 13th, were you a Hulk fan at this point?
Not this version of the Hulk, no.
Oh.
Yeah, I was still in elementary school when this thing came out, and back then, a lot of us that collected comic books were not too thrilled of the gray version of the Hulk. Much like Bud, I agree that Todd McFarlane teaming up with Peter David is something you don't see every day. Peter David is certainly a staple in Hulk literature. However, in reading this now, I'm going to stick with, in my personal opinion, that the Hulk works best when he's savage and berserk rather than a little bit more tamer and pensive. So that's my take. And as for Todd McFarlane in here, I know that later on down the road he would start drawing Spider-Man books, but just looking at this now, like to me, Bruce Banner looks so much more like Peter Parker, and so does everyone else. Like there's not too much that distinguishes faces in here, other than the even the Quartermain or whatever his name is looks like Eddie Brock. So yeah, maybe McFarlane carried that later on, but the gray version of the Hulk was just never sat well with me. And reading this again, giving it a shot, I don't think it ever will. I just think it totally defeats the purpose of what the Hulk really was about. And the leader, the way he was drawn, he looked like a piece of broccoli.
Hey, don't you knock broccoli?
I love
Granted, they're
broccoli,
not.
and now I don't want to eat broccoli for a while thanks to that.
Granted,
But
they're not Brussels
again,
sprouts, but
these guys are pros. They know what they're doing, and I get Bud's point in the direction that they want to portray their story, literally and figuratively, I guess. But to do it in a Hulk story, it's tough. If you're just a diehard fan of the Hulk, and you read these the Gray Hulk stories, you either, to me, I've seen diehard fans and then others that are saying the same thing that I am. And this is going back to when these books were released. Back in New York when I was a kid, we would go to the newsstands and there seemed to be more Hulk issues left there than Spider-Man ones. Same for Daredevil. So maybe that says something. I was just not one of those guys that ran to go pick this up. The Joe Fixit era was another one. Some guys, I think some people swallow that better than this version of the Hulk that you see here. So,
and I think Todd McFarlane's still kind of hashing out his storytelling abilities in this. It seems like a little bit almost not amateurish, but I mean, it seems so busy at points. But
I do like the tie-in with the kid in here that came from the pages of the Peter Parker Spectacular Spider-Man. Kind of gives you a little epilogue of what happened there. But the kid's powerful. He's very young, obviously, but I guess the relationship between the kid, the Hulk that developed in this issue was okay to see, and the similarities between Hulk and a child and things like that. But now you're delving into a much deeper rooted psychological problem. But again, the Hulk, in my opinion, it works better when he's savage and not pensive.
Interesting. I am absolutely slap bang in the middle on this one. I'm not overly keen. I'm not overly keen when you've got an origin of a character, and then you start loading it up. It's like buying a chili dog, right? And then you've got to put the onions on, then you've got to put the cheese, then you've got to put the bacon, then you've got to put the mustard, then the ketchup. And dude, all I wanted was a chili dog. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
The idea of Bruce having mental trauma prior to the explosion that created the Hulk, there's not a lot, and I suppose this is why retcons work or don't work sometimes. There's not a lot of history prior to that you'd even think about that. That said, if you're going to go and load up your chili dog, who better to do it than Peter David, right? Because he has his finger on the pulse on different aspects of storytelling massively. If you like his Trek stuff, he's the kind of guy who will take disparate themes and plot points from different things and then weave it together to give you a whole. And this is kind of what he's doing with this Hulk. He's not just saying, right, Gamma makes the Hulk mad, or when he loses his temper, he turns into green. In fact, in this case, it's not even that at all. He has to wait till the sun goes down, right? Right? So in my head, he's kind of playing with the mythos or the mythos or however you pronounce it, which gives 13th his cause for concern. There has to be more to the Hulk than just anger, and I think Peter David walks that line very, very well. He brings up the abuse element, which was a key part of the first movie, right? Yep. The Ang Lee movie deals with that a lot. Because I mean, there's going to be some bottled up rage about that, as well as guilt and shame and the usual things that go as an abused person. Art wise, I didn't realize it was McFarlane until I saw the credit page. I who'd have thought, I was kind of like, what? Really? I think I'm a little bit whelmed by the art. I can see McFarlane's faces. I can see some of his 13's right. I mean, we're looking at this page, that is Peter Parker stood over over the Hulk there.
Yep.
Yeah. He's absolutely right. There's no getting away from it. There's no ifs, buts, or coconuts about it. But what I found really interesting was just the amount of words. Back in the 80s, you had to go down, you had to sit down, you had to read your comic. You're not reading this in 10 minutes flat.
Nope.
And it makes you wonder why this level of storytelling, if we are an aging population as fans, why this level of storytelling went away to be replaced by the event, big panels and so on and so forth. Because to me, I would rather sit and read something like this, even if it has got broccoli on it, than anything else.
The leader of broccoli.
Yeah.
This feels more like a meal.
Yeah.
And then
Today's books are all steak and no sizzle, right?
Yeah, and the handlebar mustache too.
It rocks. It rocks. I didn't know what to expect when I picked this up. I really didn't, because the Peter David run is just held in such high esteem.
All right, no argument there on my part. I just think that this era just was a little lackluster for me.
Okay, that's cool.
Was Peter David's run heralded because of the lineup of artists he worked with the time he was on the book?
I don't know, but I think Peter David. I would read a Peter David book regardless of the artist. So,
he wrote the Sin Eater storyline, didn't he?
Exactly.
That's my favorite storyline of his, and it's not even a whole comic.
You also got to think he wrote X Factor for a while.
That's correct.
That was a really good book.
Right.
So, he wrote Trek for a while for DC, back before Trek was massively popular. So, as a writer, I think he's great. Yes, you're absolutely right, because he worked with some corkers. He worked with McFarlane. Then was it Dale Keown afterwards?
Mm-hmm. Dale Keown, yeah.
Yeah. I couldn't name you who he is after that.
I don't know how long he stayed on the book after that.
Yeah. But an interesting read, an interesting slice of 1988 for sure. A thought-provoking story because of what it deals with, the mental health aspect and abuse aspect. You're absolutely right. Betty's getting absolutely bullied at the minute there by her partner, ex-partner, whatever.
And she's still married to Bruce in this show too, so that was a little kind of questionable moral judgment.
That's what happens when you don't eat broccoli.
Here we go. Here we go. All right. Just don't go to 13th house for a burrito, for Christ's sakes. There'll be broccoli all over it. All right. So an enjoyable read, a good snapshot, I think, of the level of detail that Peter David was putting in the Hulk back then. So I think that's a really good shout. And obviously fits the trend for what we're talking about today, which was Mad March or March Madness, which leads me... Should we just call the show now? No?
Nope. We got to do your pick.
Have a piece of broccoli first, at least.
Yeah. Well, because I need the fiber to get through this book. Is that what you're saying? All right. So when we decided we'd do Mad March Bonkerness, when I thought about Crazy, there was only one book that kind of stuck in my head as being off the wall, ironically, Crazy, and that was this bad boy. This is The Amazing Spider-Man Hooky from August 86. aka Marvel graphic novel number 22. I'm surprised there's a 23rd after this one. All right. You can buy this for around £30 on eBay. Go Collect have it down at 45. Funnily enough, Go Collect don't have the original one. This book was repurposed and republished back in 2011 or 2012, and that's the one that they've got the price on. There you go. It's written by author Susan K. Putney, who demonstrates she does not know how to write a comic book. Art by the late, great Bernie Wrightson. Colors by Bernie Wrightson and Michelle Wrightson. Letters are by Jim Novak. Now, before I get into any great detail, can we all agree from the get-go that Bernie Wrightson was a comic book legend?
Agreed.
I think that goes without saying.
Yes.
Well, yeah, I'm just going to say that because I'm going to go to this book and it's going to go off. It's going to go Pete Tong from that point. All right. Okay. So, bearing in mind, Bernie Wrightson has worked on some of the greatest horror characters you can think of. We get this book, Hooky, or however you want to pronounce it. And this is what we got with. All right. Starts off quite standard New York. Someone's getting mugged. And then lo and behold, Spidey turns up. At which point, the wheels are starting to come off the wagon straight away. All right. For a start, who is that guy pointing at? Because he sure isn't pointing at Spider-Man. He's like pointing at the wall. It's like, oh no, look, there's a wall. Oh no.
There's a pipe bursting, is what he's saying.
Yeah. Oh, man. It gets worse. So Spider-Man's eyes are all wrong. You just expect better framework. It's just not a good book. Sometimes, to quote, I can't remember who said it, but sometimes it's better to burn out than fade away. Was that Jim Morrison? I don't know. But this book is a fade away book. I'm sorry to say that. Bernie Wrightson is a legend. He's a legend for all the right reasons. This is not his best work. There, I've said it. Some kerfuffle about Peter Parker's camera. Then you meet this kid who looks like one of the new gods. And before you know it, more bad poses for Spider-Man, and off he goes into the crazy realm. Colors look great, to borrow Freya's line from TDC. The colors are fantastic. And from there on in, we get exposition after exposition. We get some babes. Woohoo! No fishnets. Before we get some lovely, lovely backgrounds. And then the kid telling Spider-Man to use your webs. It's like, dude, he's Spider-Man. He knows what to do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. There's some great big kerfuffle about having to go and slay a monster, of which, yeah, it's Spider-Man, so you expect to do it. I was bought this as a present. Once my first wife bought me this as a present. I almost divorced her on the spot, but never mind. Took a couple more years before.
What did she buy for you that made you divorce her?
Broccoli.
Oh, man. Let's just say my eyes were swayed by another book. I'll just leave it at that. There is nothing redeeming about this book for me. You guys need to talk me out about picking stuff like this, because I swear to God, there is the colors. I suppose the colors are the best thing. The rest of it is just absolute homecoming awfulness and makes no sense.
You said something when you picked this.
Yeah, I know, but still, I should pick Darkness Island. I already know the professor's choice words on this one, so normally we go to the professor for Marvel first, so we'll go at 13th this time around. 13th, please say something good about this book.
So I did read this in its original comic book format, as all books are meant to be read. I am on a mission to collect the Marvel graphic novels, no matter how great or poor they may be. So this is part of that run. And when you picked it, I'm like, oh, I conveniently had my magazine box next to me, and I just pulled this one out and read it the way it was meant to be read. And it's Bernie Wrightson. So, yeah, legendary artist, like we said, goes without saying. I agree with you on the colors. and I just feel like Spider-Man was just drawn too sleek or
Mm,
too. I don't know. It's almost as if he had the statue of David as a model for Spider-Man in here, except without the
mm,
bulge. And that's why I think it didn't work with some of these poses that you're talking about, Machine.
mm,
So I agree with you there. The girl that's in here, Mirandy or Mandy, as she's later called, um, her face is not consistent throughout the book.
mm,
So she has different looks and whatnot, and she's supposed to be a being of 200 years or whatever from another dimension who knew her uncle Ben at one point. This story is really meant to be fantastical, outside of the norm for Spider-Man. Kind of like what we said the last show with Thor. We loved him
mm.
when he's in a dark dimension. Well, you don't see Spider-Man in another dimension all that often
There's a
by
reason for
himself,
that.
and and this is why. Um,
Mm,
it almost didn't make sense how this being or a girl would pick Spider-Man to be her champion,
mm,
but it happens, and he takes Spider-Man out of his normal daily routine, and now he has no idea what to do other than to try to save someone who's asking for help. How
mhm,
can he say no? But one of the things I think that suffers with the script is we know the plot. This girl is cursed, and she can't grow up to become a sorcerer. They don't. No one wants her to grow up because she comes from a long line of evil sorcerers. But Spider-Man turns this into himself. You know,
mm,
like, oh, my everyday problems and this and that, and my responsibilities. So you hear that like time and time again. Um, I think that part of the script suffers. The best part of the panel is when he goes through a door and you see all the women there.
mm.
Honestly, that's one of the top panels that you see with Bernie Wrightson, I think. And later on, when that creature that they have to fight turns into an actual fire-breathing dragon, I think those are his best panels, to be honest.
What?
And yeah, that one, yeah, the double splash page. You don't see that all too often, but this is classic Bernie Wrightson right here. And
Yeah, that
if you
shoulder
look
isn't. Just saying.
correct in a double splash page, the way the dragon is drawn, you could still see some of the pencil. You could still see um, how he put that together. I really think that's the best panel of the book.
Okay.
But I
Yeah.
agree with you, Machine. That the costume design for Spider-Man is not the norm. Um, Even towards the tail end of the book, the poses are still off. Mandy's face changes yet again. Everything's great, and Spider-Man's out of that fantastical dimension that nobody knows about.
Aussies again.
Yeah, and Doctor Strange is mentioned in here several times,
Mm,
and it's almost as if, are you teasing us with Doctor Strange coming in here, because this is definitely more of his thing than anyone else, but never makes an appearance, which is fine. But this version of Spider-Man, yeah, I don't think I'll be opening this book up again anytime soon, to be honest. Sorry,
All
man.
right.
This one's sealed and put away.
Yeah, yeah. Not for that reason, though, right? Not for the protection
It's
element.
a shame, though. You know, I love Bernie Wrightson. There's no doubt about that. You know, his
Yeah.
work on Swamp Thing and things like that. And then you see something like this, you're like, oh, Spider-Man's gonna fight a monster via Bernie Wrightson. You're like, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but I remember as a kid, the advertising for this was all over the place within the pages of comics,
No,
like Spider-Man Hooky, and like, ooh, you know,
no, I
I'm in
don't remember.
school. I haven't played Hooky yet. Maybe I wonder what this is about. Now to read it like this, I'm like,
Yeah, I'm
I should have
scared.
stayed. I'll stay in school.
I'm scared. I'm not playing hooky anymore. All right.
Exactly.
Last word from the professor.
Well, it seemed like Bernie Wrightson played hooky from finishing this book, didn't he?
Yeah.
But so I'm gonna give you my what if scenario here.
Okay.
Is I kind of feel like Bernie Wrightson spent a lot of time drawing all the backgrounds and the fantastical creatures in this book, and I feel like he probably had it done, and it was probably. And I'm going to go with 13 on this. This was probably a Doctor Strange graphic novel, and he had Doctor Strange written in there. And at the end, they had to erase him and put and slap Spidey in there. And if you go through some of this artwork and take a look, Spider-Man looks like he doesn't belong in half of these panels. It's like
Half.
it's more than half. The whole, the entire fantasy type stuff. Like I mean, that I mean, that's kind of weird. But if you go to the
Top bottom panel.
if you go to this fantasy stuff, especially when he's like fighting the dragon and stuff, it's like, yeah, I mean, it looks like they just kind of penciled him in really like at the end there. The lines on him look weird. It looks like he was kind of like slap dashed in there. Look at all the detail on the dragon, and then
Right.
that looks like that should be Conan behind that shield. You know,
That would have been awesome.
it's Spider-Man just looks so out of place in this book that it's just he's doing everything that Johnny hates about this. I mean, he's not he's just on his feet the entire time.
Yep.
And it to me, he is drawn very weirdly. The eyes look way off, especially it's in there's a couple of panels there. Like,
oh, that's awful. It's awful. Yeah.
It's like where are his actual eyes on that costume? So
my question would be, where is their eyes on his head, based on where his eye.
This almost looks like the animated Amazing Spider-Man series from the 70s.
Yeah.
The eyes may be near where the broccoli comes out.
What is it with you and broccoli? You're like addicted.
Hey, listen, let's give kudos to Bernie Wrightson for at least drawing Mandy with a Yankee hat on. So that was a plus.
You can tell that's why she's evil.
So, yeah, I mean, this book, first of all, it's like 65 pages long. So it's a slog anyway. But to have to look like, I mean, look at how great like these monsters look. And then it's like, it doesn't like that panel, the second panel, Spider-Man looks like he was just kind of drawn in over finished artwork.
Yeah, agreed. Absolutely agree. And you know what, looking with I suppose again through this book, there is that it looks like he's used the cartoon show as his model for Spider-Man, which would indicate why some of the panels are a bit wonky. I don't know. You know what? If we could ever get hold of who, I think there is an editor listed on this book. Let me just see who that is. Let me go all the way back to page
Archie
1.
Goodwin.
Is it Archie?
Yep.
No, we can't talk to him anymore, can we?
Nope.
So it'll be interesting to find out why. Oh, Jim Shooter. Next time you see Jim Shooter at a con, because you two bump into him more than I do, can you please ask him, what the hell were you smoking?
We could ask Tom DeFalco, and James Owsley.
Yeah.
James Owsley is actually Chris Priest. We could ask him too.
Cool. There you go. It'd be interesting to find out. Excellent. Cool.
Oh, Daniel Chichester. I know he was at Terrificon this year, so maybe we can take a look at him.
Well, there you go. Whichever person you can find to hurl abuse at me for this book, but I mean, I don't mean abuse. I mean abuse. To talk about why or how, or even why again. That would be cool.
Yeah, we'll see. Well,
Why? My eyes, they hurt.
Yeah, it sucks because I viewed the Marvel graphic novel series in general in high regard, right? Because they're supposed to be these outside of the norm stories and told in greater detail with these legendary quote unquote teams, things you don't normally see, and this one held true to that, except it went way out of the park.
I don't know. I think I get the idea of going outside the norm to present a new storyline and stuff. I totally get that. But surely there's a way of doing that and staying on mission statement. For example, God Love Man Kills, Chris Claremont X-Men book. That's spectacular.
Death of Captain Marvel started all
Death
off.
of Captain Marvel. These play within the playpen that Marvel have set. They're just bigger than what you'd bigger than your normal comic book, right? And that's because they've got really clever ideas behind them, so you can use the page format to expand on those ideas. I would like to know, who thought the idea. We've said it before. Who thought sticking Spider-Man in that story was a good idea?
Well, can you blame them in this time frame? Everything was Spider-Man.
Yeah. That's why I kind of thought that it might have been some other hero, and they said no, throw Spidey in there. And do we know why it's called Hooky?
No idea.
They never explain that. No.
Nah, I didn't see it. So I'm banned from picking my book next time. Just saying. All right, that's it. 3.5 up, 3.5 down, give or take. Yeah. Some absolute corkers. Kudos, I think, to the 13th choice because that was absolutely splendid. Well done, sir. Professors was a great slice of Peter David's Hulk. Mine's just bonkers. So there you go.
Hey,
Three
listen,
different.
that Born Again series comes collected as well. So
Yep.
if you were interested in reading it just for the story, that's a good way to do it. But if you're hunting these books down, you better hurry up because there's a little Daredevil Born Again show that may be coming up pretty soon. So
Yep. That's going to be the Disney Plus show. Is going to be based on Born Again, or it's going to be called Born Again.
So it's not going to.
Yeah.
It's not going to follow the current theme of the Daredevil TV show from Netflix. Then
I think the Netflix version, I believe season 3 took bits and pieces from
Yeah.
this. You know, the Kingpin's relationship with Daredevil, like how much more intense it got. But
yeah.
nothing's gonna beat the book. I mean, yeah, it sounds biased, but it is also true.
Yeah, well, I
You
think
know, this book really laid it down.
I think because the Netflix show ended with, Daredevil giving up his identity to tell Kingpin who it was that beat him up, a la the movie, kind of means that we're going to have to go back and multiverse that out.
Let me put it to you this way: would you ever see something in a movie setting or a show setting with Karen Page and how she was in that book?
Oh yeah, no. On Disney? No.
Right, with heroin, drug addicted, making porn films. I no, that's a whole nother world that may never see light on film.
Yeah.
Not with Karen Page.
Because you would think to see that on screen, you would want to lean into that aspect of it too.
Right.
So.
But you read it in the book, in the first page, that's how the story kicks off. You're like, what am I in for? That's just page 1.
Yeah, and that goes to my point that every character goes through a transition in this book.
Right.
It's not just a Daredevil thing. All right. Okay, there you go. Gentlemen, thank you so much for spending the time. We do appreciate it. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all your favorite shows, including Professor.
No Prize Podcast, all about the MCU, the Disney Plus, and we talk comics occasionally.
And broccoli.
Well, and one of us rants about comics this week, if I remember correctly. It was me. It's me. And also, don't forget to check out TDC, the Definitive Crusade, for all your DC news, which is now starting to trickle in some movie stuff because, hey, every day that ends in a Y has some more speculation about the DC movieverse. So there you go. And of course, outside the panels, the most recent ones have interviews with Jed McKay, the new Avengers writer, and of course, I mentioned before, Mark Guggenheim, the executive producer of Arrowverse, as well as writing comics as well. There you go. Got it all there, man. What more would you want? What more? Cool. All right, Professor, thanks again.
Thank you, Johnny, as always.
13th, thank you for spending the time.
Of course.
Of course. Hasta luego. And for everybody else, I've been the host, Johnny Machine Hughes. Adios.